And welcome to the Teal Tinted Glasses podcast. It is go time, people. We're here. It's me today with at Hockey Jerk, Hockey_Jerk, and at Kevin Lacey 22, also known as Hockey Jerk and Kevin Lacey. And we are here to try and put a positive spin on. No, we're not.
Ian, tell the listeners out there what they're listening to.
You are listening to the Teal Tinted Glasses podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So here we go. Obviously you just heard Kevin. Hockey Jerk, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. How are you guys?
Good. I mean, personally, I'm good. Our team. So let's start on a somewhat happier note before we really get into the disaster that is this season so far. And so we'll start with the with Dylan Hamaliuk signing his entry level contract. Kevin, I know you were pretty high on this guy on your list, no?
You, of course, caught me when I was trying to mess with my settings. Yes, Dylan Hamaliuk. He's a player. I've softened a little bit. Like I've pumped the brakes a little bit on him, but overall, I think he brings a lot of what the Sharks needed. Now they've kind of gotten that from the signing of Leon Bergman, sense, which is someone who can crash the net, go to the dirty areas, is efficient with the puck, and is just physically strong. Like, essentially the new age Ryan Clough. And
right.
So and the Sharks really, I mean, Jeff VL, I feel like, is a poor man's Ryan Clough. Probably the AHL version. And the Sharks really needed someone like that in their organization. Now, they, again, signed Leon Bergman since then, but Dylan Hamaliuk, I think, brings out a lot. He's a bit injury prone. He missed the end of last season due to injury, and I believe he recovered and then got hurt again in the off season. But overall, it's a good sign. I feel like it's a good sign when the Sharks decided we're going to do this now. Like, they, to me, seem like they've seen what they're looking to see out of him at the junior level so far, to where they're like, all right, let's get this done now. Let's not even wait, and sure. And that's got to build some confidence in Dylan as well. Being up in Canada, obviously now away from the team entirely as he focuses on his junior season, and to have that kind of backing from your management to say, yeah, we want you in our future here. So, hopefully Dylan finishes up here this season strong and can get promoted to the A and B group for training camp next year. So,
Jerk, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, when the Sharks drafted him, obviously there's a little bit of cautiousness that you have to go with it, just because, as Kevin alluded to, he did see his season end early due to injury. He scored a decent amount of points considering he was injured, and obviously, he does have a WHL championship as well, so those are kind of things that you look at and say, okay, that's good, but I want to see what you can do after you're drafted in a full healthy season and kind of go from there. So I think the early impressions were obviously encouraging, and now I think, he's got 10 points in 15 games with, 5 goals. I think he's had a really good start to his season with Kelowna. And, obviously the Sharks agree enough to sign him to the entry-level deal. And I like what you said, Kevin, about kind of the poor man's, or just new Ryan Clough in general, because, he just turned 19 and he's 6'3", 201 pounds. He's younger than I am and he's bigger than I am. So clearly a very mature kid. So I could see, with like the right development and ice time and utilization in Kelowna, and maybe even the Barracuda, should he should his junior season end before the AHL season, maybe he signs an ATO. I really think this could be a little prospect here to keep an eye on, just because of that size and that scoring factor that you alluded to.
And the other thing, guys, is that the Sharks thought they had that type of player when they drafted Adam Haluka a couple of years ago. And that obviously never came to fruition, and he's not even playing in North America anymore. So they moved Adam Haluka last offseason, the 2018 offseason, and essentially replaced that type of asset in their organization here this year, starting fresh on that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that he's in Kelowna. I think like Kelowna is easily top 10 junior, one of the top 10 junior programs in Canada, maybe even top 5. I think you could make an argument for top 5 as far as just the amount of talent that this team seems to spit out, which is obviously a huge plus. You know, obviously it's, I have a lot of faith when a player comes out of like some of these teams, you know, like the Londons and the Kelownas, and you know, there's a few others that automatically spring to mind too. Halifax, another one. So I kind of, you know, I like that about it. I mean, I haven't had a chance to really watch a lot of junior hockey this year, unfortunately. But you know, from what I hear and what little I have seen, I have liked what I've seen so far. I don't think I was super high on the pick, but you know, when it happened, but you have to, you know, you can talk about, well, I would have rather this guy and this guy, but at the end of the day, this is the guy you have. So I mean, if the Sharks, I like that the Sharks have seen something to where they want to put pen to paper, as Kevin has said, as soon as they have. And I hope it works out, because God knows the Sharks could use some more blue chip prospects in their system. All right, so let's.
Yeah, because the guys that we thought were the blue chip prospects have been struggling this year.
should we go there? Because we did have a listener question about that. You know, like, what's the story? Like, we were talking just before we recorded in the channel, and you were saying that Chmelevski's walking around in a boot, so obviously something there. But Chechovich has seen sometimes as a healthy scratch. What has your take been on those guys? You know, these are guys in the summer that we talked extensively about possibly challenging for a roster spot, and apparently we're idiots.
Well, first off, we didn't need Chechovich and Chmelevski to be scratched to know that we're idiots.
That's true.
But these players, I'm not going to single them out specifically, because outside of McGregor, I can't really think of any of the prospects who stood out in training camp.
No, and I completely and I let it be known that I completely agree with that, and that was a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, and the funniest thing for me was the player, the prospect, I guess you could say, because he's older, that I was most disappointed in training camp is the player who leads the Barracuda in scoring this season, Yolk Shellman. So what does training camp matter, I guess, you know?
Apparently.
But with Ivan and Sasha, I'm trying to figure out, and I really am hoping to ask Nick Nollenberger this next time we can get together for In the Reef on Teal Town, USA, G-Plug. But I'm really hoping to ask, like, why does he think, or I'll throw it out to the viewers, the listeners here. Why do you guys think that Sasha Chmelevski and Ivan Chechovich came in each of the last 2 years off their junior careers and just lit up the AHL in a brief amount of time? And now here this year, where they're actually regulars on a professional contract with the AHL team, and they both look completely lost. Like, Sasha's -4, he's got 1 point in 6 games, and now apparently is out injured with some kind of foot injury because he's got that boot on. Ivan Chechovich has a goal. I think it happened in like game 2. Other than that, he's been completely invisible. And he's been scratched already 3 times now. And Roy Sommer has said he's defensively deficient. And if he's not contributing in goal scoring, then we don't need him in the lineup. Like, he actually said that in a presser. So these guys are going to need, I don't know if they got big heads. Like, we came in off of our junior careers and tore up the AHL, and we know we're good enough for this. Or I'm not sure what it is, if it got in their heads. What do you guys think? Do you think
I think part of it is, that these guys are going to be on, like, for opposing teams, like, these guys aren't going to be under the radar anymore. There's going to be tape on these guys now. There's going to be habits that other teams are going to be able to pick up on. And I think that, look at the one thing that's really easy to defend in professional hockey is guys still playing junior hockey.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's, I'm not saying that, I'm just offering my opinion that could be the case. I haven't been able to watch any Barracuda games this year. That's going to be a thing that's going to start happening very, very soon. I promise, but I mean, right now I haven't really seen them, so I can only, if I had to offer a guess, it would be that, well, there's tape on these guys now. These guys, obviously other teams prepare for, there's a lot of tape being watched by other teams. A lot of teams know, what guys are going to do. And I'm not saying that, are they playing too junior hockey? Well, junior hockey is a little more run and gun than pro hockey. So I could see the defensive problems, for a player like Chechovich. I can understand how Roy Sommer could see potential defensive issues and not be happy with that. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, you watch them. Does any of this make any sense? Like, does any of this make sense for you? Kevin?
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking to Hockey Jerk there. What was your question? I was reading the chat here.
Oh, I was just saying, like, the idea of, there's tape on these guys and other opposing teams.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And not only that, but after what they've done the last 2 years, these teams are probably keying in on them and saying, sure, we got to find every possible way to stop these guys. And so they have a lot less room to maneuver, I suppose. I think it's a really good point that you made, Ian. Mm-hmm. So, no, Rob, there's no ECHL team to
the Sharks don't have it. Yeah,
one.
That's
and
right.
Two, just like you don't waive Kevin LeBanc, you don't put your best prospects in the ECHL. Let's get over that right now.
Yeah, let's like I know right now, like, you look at a guy like, obviously, Bergman, I think, has been pretty impressive from all accounts. Again, I can't speak to it personally, but a lot of people have been really impressed by his play. These guys are going to figure it out. It takes time.
One of the things I mentioned earlier today off air, before I found out about Chmelevski's injury, was this roster. Granted, the record is very mediocre. Mm-hmm. They're still finding their way and their chemistry and everything. But this roster, there's so many players on the Barracuda roster that you can't suck and still get a lineup spot. Unless you're Antti Suomela. But Antti Suomela had a wonderful game today. He played outstanding today, and he scored. But even if he didn't score, I thought he was great today. So, so it's one of hopefully many more. But I mean, Blichfeld has had a great week. But before that, he wasn't doing anything at all. And Chechovich not doing anything. Chmelevski not doing anything. Bergman's been great. Shellman's been great. Alex True has been okay, although he does have 7 points. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to see a lot of lineup switching, I feel like, just because of the number of assets that the Barracuda have, especially on defense. I don't know. Right. I mean, to me, the most interesting thing to watch of probably the whole organization, besides the fact what are the Sharks going to do to get themselves out of this hole? The next best storyline to me is just going to be, how is Roy Sommer going to keep everyone happy this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, and because not only do they have too many guys on the team, on the Barracuda right now. Like, that's a huge problem with the Barracudas. They have a lot of guys where they're shuffling guys in and out, and I think that's going to be probably going to make some trouble with chemistry, I think. And I think it's also, a guy might get into the lineup and wind up out of the lineup really quick, and that's got to be painful for their confidence.
Yeah. And Doug Wilson and Peter DeBoer were there at the arena today for the Barracuda game. I did not see Doug Wilson in the third period. I'm kind of hoping he left because the Barracuda had a monumental meltdown in the third period. So hopefully D-Dub only saw the good part of the game.
Right.
But just the fact that they were both there, as... Doug Wilson's obviously management, and Peter DeBoer, has, as a coach, he should be involved in it as well, in the decisions. I don't know if the Sharks' struggles have anything to do with this, because you'd think these guys would be at the games more often than not, although I don't usually see them. But the fact that Wilson and DeBoer were there today says to me that they're keeping close eyes on these players for potential call-ups or for potential trades.
Ooh, that's an interesting take, because something has to give here at some point.
Something's got to give, and if the Sharks have to move assets to bring in assets, that's going to involve this Barracuda team. So Doug Wilson's probably saying, all right, which of the guys can I afford to part with, or which of the guys are here that I can part with, but I can say, hey, this guy's having a really great season, and try and gain some leverage in discussions there.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, in the chat, the Vlasic to Montreal, because Montreal keeps showing up at Sharks games, and so there's the Vlasic to Montreal rumors. I don't know if that would even make me angry at this point.
Yeah, I don't think I would be too upset either. And I mean, when you kind of look at it from Montreal's perspective, they could probably stand to use a left-handed defenseman. I mean, they've got a really solid three. They've got Jeff Petrie, Shea Weber, and Ben Sherratt. Mm-hmm. But they could really probably stand to use a left defenseman to play, with either Shea Weber or Ben Sherratt. So I see where somebody might put those puzzle pieces together where, okay, Montreal could use a left D. Montreal's been at the last two Sharks games. The Sharks have a left D who's struggling. Like, I can see where these puzzle pieces fall into place, but I'm with you, Ian. I wouldn't be upset, but I feel like a lot would have to go right for that kind of facilitation to go down.
I mean, one, Vlasic has to agree to go, which we don't know he would. Like, everyone thinks, well, okay, it's close to home. He'd probably at least consider it, but he'd have to okay it. I mean, right now, I don't know if I would be, like, if someone offered me a life raft right now, I'd probably take it if I'm on this team.
See, I feel like Vlasic's the type of guy who would, too. Like, he's a pretty emotional guy, and I feel like he, among most players, would be pissed off.
See, and I'm going to take the opposite side, because while I'm not claiming to know anything,
right.
I get the impression that Vlasic's never been a guy who wants to play at home. You know what I mean? I almost wonder if he does better or feels better being away from his hometown. And I mean, it's not, it's not a situation like Joe Pavelski where the season ends and he goes back to the Midwest every year, or,
right.
Vlasic, yes, Vlasic does have property in Montreal. That's not a secret. But Vlasic also lives here. Like, he has a house and some kind of semi-permanent roots here. So, he's very much, I don't want to say okay with not being at home, but it just doesn't seem like something that's important to him.
Well, that's and there's, there's a big difference between playing in San Jose and playing in Montreal too, as far as like, because when you're bad in Montreal, man, you hear it. You don't have the same privacy that you would in the Bay Area. Like, people will track you down unless you know just how much they are angry with how your team's doing. Now, right now, I think Montreal's doing okay.
Yeah, they're doing well.
Yeah,
at least Vlasic speaks French, right?
That's right, and that always helps. I don't know. I mean, it's hard, right? Because I don't like. I hate when I don't hate, but I like when we do this. It's easy to just be like, oh well, no one cares and blah blah blah. Like I don't know these guys off the ice, and I don't. Like it's kind of like it goes down to like the Logan Couture leadership, which is something I want to talk about too. It's like I don't know Logan Couture. So I'm not in the locker room. I can't tell you if he's a good leader or a bad leader. I don't think it's fair. I mean, this dovetails into a lot of things I want to talk about. Like, I don't think this is all on Logan Couture. I don't think this is all on Erik Karlsson. Like, there's a lot of blame to go around here. I don't think that if Pavelski's here, the Sharks are suddenly better because he can yell at them in the locker room.
No, you're right. I don't like. I hate the idea, and I saw something on Twitter where it's like, oh, Couture's not a good captain because of X, Y, and Z, and like you said, Ian, like you don't know Logan Couture personally.
Hey. Yeah, Marleau was such a terrible captain. That's why Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner have done nothing but praise him for the last several months.
Yeah, exactly.
A horrible captain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and like you said, Ian, you don't know Logan Couture. I don't know Logan Couture. Kevin might know his parents, but he doesn't know Logan Couture. And so, we can make assessments or judgments based on what we've heard and what we know and what we see. But the only people who really know what's going on are the people who have a firsthand experience, in that bubble, so to speak.
Right.
Like, unless you're allowed in that room, you have no clue what's going on. Even if let's say Joe Thornton, even if Joe Thornton were to come up to one of us and say, oh, in the locker room where it's super private, this happened. Like, would you really believe him? No, because you weren't there.
Exactly.
That and Joe Thornton loves to take people for a ride. I'm not saying Logan Couture's captaincy is a super success at this point. Like, look, like he's a part of the problem for sure. One goal is completely unacceptable, but it's been 14 games, 15 games. Like, I'm not gonna say in a 15 game, oh, he's completely being weighed down by the sea, or like, I think there's a lot of takes around Logan Couture that, like, at least revolving his captaincy, that I think they're just based on nothing. They're just hyperbole.
Well, and for years, even going back to, not his necessarily his rookie year, but his first few years when he was a young guy, like these ideas that he has some kind of character or attitude issues seem to, manifest out of thin air. And it's like, okay, number one, where did you hear that? Number two, why do you think that? Number three, like, you watch what he does on the ice. Like, he's a super shy guy with the media and with fans, but like on the ice with the boys, he's one of the most like pumped up and let's go guys I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
By the way, Czech Couture sends his regards. No, but for real, I mean, it's just like us speculating about like Vlasic maybe likes road life better than he likes home life. Like, we don't know. It's all speculation, so we can only say so much about Couture. But I think we all collectively, I think Couture's fine as a leader. I think a few years ago, I absolutely was the opposite of that. I said, there's no way, this guy's too whiny on the ice. Yeah. He just complains about everything. And even in his interviews, he just came off kind of like a douche. And I feel like he's matured a ton since then. And as far as his captaincy goes and his lack of offense right now, I feel like Couture's the type of guy, because Hockey Jerk, you just mentioned, like, he's a real heart and soul guy on the ice. I think that Couture's the type of guy who's putting too much pressure on himself because the team is struggling. We know that. And I feel like he's holding himself responsible for that, which I guess is captain, that makes sense. But that might be why he's struggling-ish offensively, just because he's more worried about other things in his own game. And then that is actually affecting his own game.
Sure. I mean, and the thing that I respect about Couture is, like, at least he came out, like, I know some guys didn't like the fact that, like, some people didn't like the fact that he came out and buried some guys in an interview, but I thought the way the league has changed, and this is something that was said on the 31 Thoughts podcast, that the league is changed in a way now where it's the players that have to be the more vocal. Because the coach, you know, doesn't have the same power that they used to. So it's up to, you know, the players are the ones that are going to have to come and step up.
Yeah, I agree. And how many, you know, you still hear stories about coaches who are notorious for giving their players an earful. I mean, one guy that comes to mind, like, I believe it, Mike Keenan, like,
sure,
depending on who you ask, like, they have a hard time finding something nice to say about him. And I think you're right, where, you know, the coach who's going to yell and scream and rip their necktie off, like, you can't have that anymore. Like absolutely, like, you gotta, it is on the players. And I've said it many times before, but, like, the players ultimately determine what happens on the ice. And I think the coach is just there to facilitate everything and make it happen. But ultimately the players have to keep each other accountable, because, you know, no players and there's no game to play, you know?
Right. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I think the Sharks should fire Peter DeBoer, but in this specific instance, like, I think that it does need to be more on the players, because the players are the guys. You can't fire your players. You can fire a coach. You can't fire the players. So if the players, you know, if you would, obviously, maybe you don't like the idea that he would dress someone down in public, and maybe that should be private, and that's fine. I understand that, but I would rather, like, that's pretty much like the only accountability we've seen from the team so far. And sure, I understand that people are going to be like, well, that's fantastic. It's a lot of talk. Where's the action? And look, fair play. You know, there's got to be some, you know, Couture's going to have to start backing up some of this talk with, you know, play on the ice that's going to have to translate into offense for this team to turn things around. Like, that's what he's paid to do. So I don't know. Go ahead.
I noticed, because there is a little bit of chatter about Erik Karlsson in the chat.
I was going there next.
Okay, well then, perfect segue here. Friday night, because I was at the game on Friday, so I didn't have the ability to rewatch or catch. I don't know if this got caught on camera, but at the end of the second period, Logan Couture started screaming at somebody, just in frustration. I couldn't tell if it was the ref, but I think it was Erik Karlsson he was yelling at. And I was hoping someone would be able to confirm that they saw this, but do you think there's a little bit of locker room dissension with, because I've said what would make Erik Karlsson not work in San Jose is them trying to fit Karlsson into the Shark system instead of building the system around Erik Karlsson. So do you guys think that there might be any kind of dissension in the locker room where it's, you know, that's getting onto the ice, or what's up?
Oof, that's a good one.
Forepaws says he thinks he was yelling at a ref, and I would hope so.
And that's possible.
Because I didn't... Now, granted, there were other parts later in the game that I thought Karlsson and Burns both deserved to be yelled at, but I thought in that moment Karlsson hadn't done anything wrong. So.
I don't think there's any dissension, because it's, you know, we've seen this time and time again, right? Where when things aren't going right, it's very easy to get upset at, you know, your team, if it's a sport, your teammates, or if it's a job, your coworkers, or a family member. In any situation, it's a lot easier to get upset at somebody you're supposed to work with when things aren't going right. And so even if Couture was yelling at Carl, I don't think it's necessarily any indicator of any kind of dissension or anything like that. I almost think it's like kind of like, where, yes, you're maybe yelling at one person, but I don't want to say lashing out just because they're the closest person to you, but just kind of saying, generally speaking, like, we all got to get our heads on straight, and it just so happens that Karlsson was right there.
Okay, that's fair, because I mean, the number of times that you look at the Penguins bench and Patrick Hornquist is yelling at everybody, and it seems like they love him. So that's very fair.
I don't think sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even then, Kessel and Malkin, the Sportsnet showed them yelling at each other on the bench, and then later in that game when they scored, they were hugs and kisses, and everything was fantastic.
And I think too, like, I don't think, like, nothing on the ice that I've seen, like, shows that there's, like, I don't think there's a schism between the players. The players seem very united in just being awful together.
Wow.
Like, I think there's a disconnect between the players and the coaching staff at this point. But I feel like I don't think there's a schism between the players. Like, I don't think that, at least there's nothing that says, like, there's that this locker room is fragmented against itself. But I mean, so kind of segueing to Erik Karlsson here. Obviously, he got singled out with some booze the other game. I mean, my take here, like, I don't like it. I understand. Like, I've always been a guy that says, if you buy your ticket, you're allowed to go in that arena and you can cheer and boo whoever the hell you want. So I respect their right to do so. I didn't like it. I don't think that I don't think that it's really fair. I mean, if you got paid in your job the most money available to someone in your job, are you going to take it or are you going to walk away from it? Me, I will be the highest paid person in my job, whether I deserve it or not. Someone's going to throw a contract in front of me that says, Ian, you get to make $11.5 million a year to be the best damn Home Depot customer service guy in the world. I am going to take that $11.5 million every time. I don't like it. Like, I understand it, and I respect that people are allowed to voice their opinions, but, like, I don't like it because this disaster is not Erik Karlsson's fault. He could have gone
I agree with
anywhere. Anywhere. He chose to stay here. He could have left. He could have. Someone else would have given him that money. If you think no one else would have given him that money, you're out of your mind. Someone was going to give him that money. Now, did San Jose have to give him that money? We can argue about that till the cows come home, but the offer was made. He accepted the offer. Yes. Have we seen the best of Erik Karlsson? No. Have we seen the best of anyone? No.
I think we've seen the best of Kevin LeBanc.
Sure. We've arguably seen the best from some players. I mean, this thing is not completely, to a man off the rails, but there's a lot of players making a lot of money. Maybe not as much as Erik Karlsson. Fine. I'll give you that. But there's a lot of people making a lot of money on this team, not doing anything to earn that money right now.
Right. And Mason says, let's boo Jones instead. I will say...
That would be more... I would probably boo with you.
I will say, I still feel like the goaltending issues are a part of the defense issues are a part of the goaltending issues. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of chatter in the stands for the Barracuda game today about time to call up Joseph Korenar. Now, I have said time and time again, I'd rather the Sharks struggle all year and let the Barracuda succeed and let the youngsters be a part of a winning culture here with the Barracuda as opposed to struggling with the Sharks. But I said it in the Reef, I'll say it now. If the Sharks are still struggling here, I said by Christmas, but I think at this point, now by Thanksgiving, if the Sharks are still struggling, you see a goalie move and you see Korenar get called up, possibly for the remainder of the season. Like it's Doug Wilson has, to me, more or less been a reactionary GM, and
Okay.
I wouldn't doubt it. I don't know if it's the best for him, but I wouldn't doubt that actually happening, seeing Korenar sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want it because, like, every time someone brings up St. Louis, I want to slam my head across my keyboard repeatedly.
Well, then let's bring Troy Grosnick back if we're going to do the St. Louis thing.
Like, we're going to get to Doug Wilson, I promise. Yeah, I mean, I don't love the idea, but at the same time, like, this team can't tank. You don't have the assets to tank. So I mean, you know,
Well,
I
they could
guess
tank, then Ottawa would. Why do you think Ottawa wanted to beat the Sharks last
Yeah.
weekend? Because they have our first round pick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, the thing is with Korenar, like, I don't want to see him just brought up into this mess where the defense in front of him is going to be absolutely poor. Cause here's the problem is, okay, if Korenar comes up and it goes great, then fantastic. And I'm an idiot. But if it goes terrible, then what do you sell the fans? Did you see the empty seats in that arena last 2 nights? Like, those are weekend games. You think that's going to get any better if Korenar comes up and gets his face absolutely blown off and looks, you know, well, I don't think he'd look worse than Dell or Jones at this point. Like, it's a nuclear option. I mean, at that point, what do you do?
I think the
Yeah,
Sharks.
that's
Hockey Jerk, I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to let you finish. I'm going to let you go, but I just want to say this was my biggest worry, and it's turned out to be far worse in that I thought there would be a lot of holes in the forwards, and the D hasn't even been on the forwards. I feel like it's just been the whole team. And I don't know what Doug Wilson can do with the assets he's got.
That's why I kind of was going there too, Kevin, and that's why I think you pretty much just have to stay the course with what you have and hope that your good players can play the way that they're supposed to or the way that we expect them to. I mean, obviously, you know, when it rains, it pours, right? Like, I don't think anybody expected Timo Meier to only have 2 goals in the first 14 games of the season. You know, it's like logic would tell you that that's going to turn around. Like, logic would tell you that Hertl and Couture are going to turn things around. And obviously you don't have the luxury of time to wait for these things to happen. But because of the limited assets like you talked about, Kevin, I think the Sharks' only choice is just to stay the course and see what happens for the time being.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let's go ahead.
I'm with you on that. I just, like I said, I feel Doug Wilson's a very reactionary GM, and I'm worried that he's going to just try and course correct, and just dig us deeper and deeper.
Here's my concern. Like, I agree there has to be some staying the course here, but Peter DeBoer's time in San Jose should be over. Like, I am absolutely done with a few things in San Jose right now. I'm absolutely done with Jones, and I'm absolutely done with Peter DeBoer.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much since we started three and a half years ago, we've been on the anti-Peter DeBoer train here. I don't know what else can be said. I feel bad for him right now, because I don't think it's entirely on the coaching, but the first fix is the coaching, in my opinion.
For this team, like, I don't want to sound like you want to come on here. You don't want to just, like, sound super melodramatic, but this team can't look any worse. And every time you think that, like the Winnipeg game or the home game against Buffalo, where they lost, but, you know, they looked okay. And the Winnipeg game, they showed signs, at least, something that you could grab onto and say, okay, you know, this wasn't great. They lost, but maybe, just maybe, they're going to turn it around. And then they have, that game against Vancouver. And there's for me, I can't understand why, I would have fired Peter DeBoer that night.
The Vancouver, I actually, truthfully, when I was walking around the concourse today and I saw Peter DeBoer, first off, Peter DeBoer was talking to Evgeny Nabokov, obviously both on the coaching staff,
sure.
But someone made the comment to me of, oh, do you think he's asking Nabby if he can play goal next game? But I will be honest, when I walked on the concourse and saw Peter DeBoer there, my first thought was, man, well, I guess he is around another day. I seriously thought that Vancouver might have been the final straw, but
I've never been one to say, oh, fire the coach and that'll fix. I think that's pretty well established. But I think what it is at this point is that the way that DeBoer coaches, the way he likes to do certain things and run his team, I just don't think his style works with the personnel
right
that the Sharks have. DeBoer is he's very reserved. It's like, okay, slow it down. Let's see what will manifest out of, some cycling the puck around. Well, I feel like you have Couture, Meyer, LeBanc, Burns, and Carlson. Like, all these guys are very slashy. Let's shoot the puck. Let's dig in there. Let's make things happen. And I think the ideologies here are clashing. And that's not to say Peter DeBoer is a bad coach. I just don't think he's the right coach.
Right.
I think coaches have a shelf life, and I've never seen, under Peter DeBoer, I've never seen the Sharks look this bad. The last time they looked this bad was Todd McClellan's last year, and I think they're even worse than that right now.
Oh, they are way worse.
And that's problematic. And so, with Peter DeBoer, we could hammer Peter DeBoer for another half an hour, and I'm not going to do that, because the question I have, because this is the thing where I'm now, the longer that Peter DeBoer is the head coach of this team, for me, the brighter the spotlight that puts on Doug Wilson. I'm honestly, I know, maybe this is a little more melodramatic, but I would, if I'm Hasselplattner, I'm cleaning house.
Yeah.
At this point, because Doug Wilson, I said this last week on the podcast, if I go into my job and I lose my job, I lose my business, a ton of money. Well, it doesn't matter what my intentions were. It doesn't matter if I think it was the greatest thing ever. The end result is the same. Look at when, however you feel about Erik Karlsson, this contract, this amount of money on the blue line, it's not working. And, you can blame Peter DeBoer for plenty, but at some point, there's been a lot of flaws on this team. We've talked ad nauseum, the fact that Peter DeBoer will only play 5 of his 6 defensemen. These are things that Doug Wilson is 100% culpable in. He has watched this happen the whole time and continues to watch this happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I'm of the belief that, and I think I said it before, but I don't know what Doug Wilson could have done differently. I've heard a lot of people who want to fire Doug Wilson, and I don't disagree with that. I think so. I think the last couple of years, I think he's done everything right. But to your point, Ian, when the coaching isn't working out and the direct boss is not making anything happen to fix that, that's when more problems get created. And I think I want to say it was the 31 Thoughts podcast where somebody told a story where basically an owner was saying, look, if you don't fire the coach, then I'm going to fire you.
That was Drew talking to AJ.
That's right. Okay, I know I heard that somewhere. And which plug to AJ for...
Plug to AJ, Teal Tinted USA.
I was going to say, you should be blessed that I think of AJ and 31 Thoughts same wavelength. But it was a 100% valid point. And, if as much as I think Doug Wilson is totally fine in his position. If he's not addressing the direct concerns, then it creates another concern that's even worse.
Now, here's the other thing is that I say I was surprised to even see Peter DeBoer on the concourse today, still employed with the Sharks at the same time. You have to have an exit strategy. Not Doug Wilson for Peter DeBoer and Hasso Plattner for Doug Wilson, if that's a thing. You have to know where you're going. The Sharks are not going to be calling Royce Sommer up from the Barracuda
No.
to the Sharks after 20-something years. And it happened one time as an assistant. It's not happening now. So they'd have to go externally, and I don't know who's available. Dan Bilesma? I don't know. But
just go through the Rolodex of coaches that got fired last year.
Right. I mean, it's the old boys club. So who's not working that?
And this is where, again, I've been saying for so long, the Sharks need to call up Toronto and grab Sheldon Keefe. You're not doing that mid-season.
I would.
Do you think?
I mean, Toronto probably would. Would Toronto allow it? Probably not. But that would be my first call.
It would be my first call if that can happen, but it doesn't.
Toronto would have to. Yeah, Toronto would have to let him. Toronto would have to let him talk to us. But, and then obviously Sheldon Keefe would have to either accept or not accept the offer. But I mean, there's guys out there. There's guys out there. I feel like I don't even care if they bring in a virtual unknown at this point. I would rather that. Because I think this league needs new ideas.
Well, look at the Blackhawks with Jeremy Colleton, who's younger than half the players on the Blackhawks roster.
Yeah, I mean, it's I get it. I understand how people, I think Peter DeBoer, I think most of the fan base is pretty much done with Peter DeBoer at this point. I understand why people get their backs up a little when you look to Doug Wilson. And then there's half of the, there's a very loud portion of our fan base that has wanted Doug Wilson gone for a while. But I mean, at this point, I understand, we got to finally be the bride, but damn, the mess, again, it doesn't really matter how well you intended it to go. And I think that the Sharks are obviously capable of much better play than they're playing. But this team is not set up to be, and look, it's November 3rd, but this is not a team that's built to be in the very bottom of forget the Pacific Division, the Western Conference. Minnesota and Chicago and LA are tied with points at 9 points. The difference is Minnesota's only played 14 games. Chicago's only played 12 games. And the Los Angeles Kings have played 14 games to our 15. So not only are we, tied with these teams for points, they have games in hand. That's terrible. And you look at, I mean, I'm not going to say the cupboards are barren, but I think we've all said that, the Sharks are probably still in the bottom third of the league for prospects, for a prospect pool.
Yeah.
I think that, we've been pretty honest. We talk up our guys, but I think we've been very honest on this podcast about where the Sharks sit podcast wise, prospect wise. They're in the bottom third of the league. They have no first round pick. Pick is not lottery protected.
I can't imagine that if the Sharks miss the playoffs, I can't imagine Doug Wilson not going out and acquiring a first round pick. But
it's not going to be a top, this could be a top 5 pick.
The Sharks would have had they,
right? And that's the thing. I understand, Doug Wilson has done a lot of good things on this team. But when the league switched and everyone had to start handing out max term contracts, that's when things really started going off the rails for this team. I can't, and at that point, it's at that point, at some point, I think you just need to change it up. And I know people don't want to hear change for the sake of change, but again, I'm not discounting the things that Doug Wilson has done, but I don't have a lot of confidence in Doug Wilson going forward.
I mean, I think this will be the true test for him to see, if he should have been fired when everybody was calling for it 5 years ago, or, if he's going to be able to work the Sharks out of this. I mean, it's obviously concerning, we're a month into the season and things look desolate, but there's still a lot of really good pieces on this roster. I mean, there's still, I don't know, I hate to say that it's too early because we're a month in, but
sure.
so much could change at the drop of a hat. As much as I think the three of us are all definitely on the same page with what should happen or what needs to happen, but if everything just turns around, I'm wondering how much of what we all talked about will just, slip under the rug until the next catastrophe.
That's fair. I don't know. I think it's fair. And I know that obviously I think when I know how to play to the audience. I understand the audience, and I don't want to just I've been kind of on over Doug Wilson for a while, but I'm not going to hammer that out when things are going great. No one wants to, hey, everything's awesome, but I hate Doug Wilson. I don't know. For me, it's hard right now because I look at what is going to happen here, and you look at these contracts and, getting, we joke about getting out from under Vlasic's contract, but is that, that's rough because Vlasic should be more a part of what we need and not so much, the guy you'd want to go. You would think at this point, you'd be well, maybe one of Burns or maybe Burnsy can be taken by Seattle.
See, but I don't understand that because I still am of the belief that why expose him for Seattle and let somebody get a Norris Trophy winner for free? I still
because
think
you've tied your hands.
Yes, but I still think if you go to the right team, I still think you can get close to max value for Burns.
Sure.
There are a lot of teams who would be slobbering to get a Norris defenseman.
I'm not saying that. I am not advocating here for putting Burns up for Seattle to take. Do not get me wrong. This is not something I am advocating for. It's not something that I want to see. I'm just saying, let's say you're a couple years down the road and you can't get the train back on the tracks. You can't put Vlasic up. He's got a no move.
Mm-hmm.
Carlson probably has a no move as well. You got to make room somewhere. This team's got way too much money on the blue line.
And so Carlson signs a big contract and causes problems, and Burns does this and Vlasic does that, and so the solution is to let Brendan Dillon go.
Yeah, which is the sad thing, because honestly, at this point, if you put a gun to my head and said, Marc-Edouard Vlasic or Brendan Dillon, I would say Brendan Dillon.
Yeah. I agree. I'm totally going to botch what podcast I heard this on, but they were, I want to say it was the TSN podcast. I think it might have been the Darren Dreger podcast, but they were saying that it has been a very long time since forwards were afraid to carry the puck up a certain side of the ice because of the defensemen they were going against. Mm-hmm. And they said that for the first time in a while, forwards are afraid of carrying the puck up the side of the ice that Brendan Dillon is on, because they know
also
they're either going to get. Yes, was it really?
Yes.
Jesus. Okay. Well, props to AJ again. Who obviously AJ always kills.
AJ has now been mixed up with Elliot Friedman and Darren Dreger, apparently.
Well, AJ always kills it. That's no secret. But and I still to your point, Ian. Dillon has probably been the most valuable defenseman lately. I mean, he hits guys. He's very he's just so much better than when the Sharks first got him.
I would be completely fine with the left side of Dylan, Šimik, and Ferraro.
Yeah, me too.
Šimik's looked pretty good in his rehab games for the Barracuda.
Yeah, I mean, and and that's the thing. I think a lot of what's gonna happen next, I think, is gonna depend on Radim Šimik, because again, we liked what we saw when we had him before he got injured, but that's 41 games.
Yeah, he's looking, 2 years ago, he looked like a mess in the AHL.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I remember
he couldn't defend at all. The only thing he could do was Sandis Oslunch his way up the ice and score, and could not play defense at all. And then what did we get? Frickin' defensive beast on the Sharks that had no resemblance to the player he was in the AHL.
Right.
So far in the rehab games, he's looking like last year's Radim Šimik, thankfully. He's looking slow. I think he looks slow. Obviously, coming off of a major knee surgery, that's not surprising. But I feel like his instincts and his positioning have actually been very good. So it's just a matter of getting him up to foot speed at the AHL level so that he can get up to foot speed at the NHL level, I think, at this point.
Right. And it's like, Šimik won't solve the team's offensive woes. Look, that's true. It's not going to solve the team's offensive woes. But maybe, just maybe, he can contribute to, maybe pucks not going in the other way.
Well, if you have a strong defense, which the Sharks should, I mean, on paper they do, then you're going to have the puck. But the Sharks can't even get the puck. So how are the forwards supposed to even do anything?
Right. There's that, and that's the problem with this team, right? It's like, well, where are the goals going to come from? How is it going to stop? That's the issue. The Sharks have played a lot of the season without the puck, which isn't Sharks hockey at all. And I think, like I said earlier in the show, I am done with Martin Jones. Done. He is dead to me. Arundel, pretty much there too. He's got a cool mask, but pretty much dead to me at this moment. How, and this also goes back to where Doug Wilson, where we saw last season. Look, we saw a whole season, of pretty crappy goaltending. And again, I understand that you signed Erik Karlsson to a big contract and you mismanaged the cap a little. How you came back this season, fine. Martin Jones, I understand Martin Jones is a little bit toxic at his $5.25 million or whatever the hell it is. But you could have bought out Arundel. You could have tried to trade him.
Yeah.
The fact that the fact that Doug Wilson came back with the same goalies is, for a team that's supposed to be a now team, a cup team, is ridiculous. I understand that Martin Jones was able to turn it on a little bit in the playoffs, but great. You had a good 10 games. The other 90 were garbage.
I think that Doug Wilson, Jones aside, in the case of Dell, I still firmly believe that Bebo should have been the backup this year.
I was going to say the same thing.
Dell actually had a very good camp. Again, as we talked about with Joel Shellman, for example, apparently training camp meant nothing. Aaron Dell had a very good camp, and Antoine Bibeau did not. Antoine Bibeau isn't even top 2 goalie in Colorado right now. That's pretty scary. And I'm not talking the Avalanche. I'm talking the Eagles. He's the right. So in Wilson's defense, I think he fully expected to have traded Aaron Dell by now, but nobody stepped up to the plate within reason. Because again, Korenar is really young and has time to be called up. But I don't think he anticipated it for Jones and Dell.
Christine asking, has anyone played goalie? How does this happen? I've never played goalie at any reasonable level of hockey. The things that bother me with Jones is sometimes his fundamentals are just his just basic fundamentals are gone. Like his angles are sometimes just wonky. But I think really, how does this happen? Like how do you start off good? It's tape. The book's out on Martin Jones. And you either adapt or you continue being the same goalie. Martin Jones hasn't been able to adapt. The book's out on him. People know where to shoot. People know how to open him up. People know, and good teams have exploited him big time. And look, the defense isn't helping him. The defense shares a huge part of the blame for the Sharks not being able to keep the puck out of the net. But you at least want to see the fundamentals from Jones. And sometimes you don't even get that, in my opinion, which, granted, isn't worth a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah, the two things with Jones that stand out to me that always frustrate me is, number one, I feel like when he stays back in his crease, he makes himself really small and opens up either up top, or down low, like between the arm and pad. And I've noticed too, he never does what you want him to do. Like I feel like when everything is really in tight, he's like way out of the crease. And I feel like when you got a guy bearing down on an odd man rush, he's like shoulders against the crossbar. Like, okay, what am I going to do here? I just feel like no matter, I think you're right. The fundamentals sometimes just totally fall apart. And I think, he doesn't make himself big and he doesn't swallow up as much as he needs to, like in terms of just rebounds and, covering parts of the net. And like when you struggle with those basic fundamentals, like you said, Ian, like teams are going to know how to beat you because, they can beat you. I mean, they can beat you from anywhere,
Right. And the thing is, like, and you can talk about the defense being terrible. Winnipeg's defense has been pretty bad this year. Like, their defense core got completely dismantled. Connor Hellebuck's still a 9.922 save percentage. Like, at some point, I understand you can blame the defense and you can dog the defense all you want. But at some point, the goalie's got to make a save.
Yeah, it's especially, and I mean, it's no secret, Ian, that you've never really been a Martin Jones fan. I mean, even when he was carrying the team, or more like dragging the team through the Stanley Cup final in 2016, you were very much like, yeah, this is fantastic, but this is as good as it's going to get, and myself included. But a lot of people were like, okay, what are you talking about? You don't know anything. And now
sure, I don't.
Those words that you said 3 years ago are starting to manifest.
Yeah.
And and Forepaw is also saying short goalies always have the 5-hole open, but to my knowledge, Martin Jones is the tallest people on the team.
Martin Jones is 6'4", isn't he?
6, yeah. I mean, he's pretty average height for a goaltender. I mean, obviously, he's not 6'14" million of Connor Hellebuck, but he's still a tall guy.
I was gonna say he's not Ben Bishop or anything.
Right. He's not Ben Bishop, or like I think Connor Hellebuck's like 6'7" or something ridiculous like that.
It's nervous. That's
why is
for
his
sure.
5-hole open? Because his fundamentals are flawed. And
they need to get him with the guy who fixed Devin Dubnyk.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't like, everyone's like, oh, we'll just switch Nabokov for Hedberg or whatever. I don't think this is a coaching issue. I just don't think he's very good.
By the way, the goalie that, or the coach that fixed Devin Dubnyk, Mitch Korn, is also the goalie. I keep saying goalie. The coach that fixed, I believe, Braden Holtby and Robin Leonard last year.
I was going to say, I don't know if this is like the Mandela effect or if this thing, but didn't he also work with Troy Grosnick a little bit?
I was about to say that. I remember Zach Devine mentioning that after he talked to Troy Grosnick, that off season that Troy Grosnick went from being like an 885 save percentage to being an AHL
Right.
All-Star. I believe he did go to Mitch Korn on his own accord for training.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think he's very good. Period. Like, and that's just look. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. But I think the save percentage at this point, we're not talking small sample size anymore. We've got this season. You've got last season. Even his best season, what was the save percentage? Was it even .915?
Let me look. Well, first, what do you qualify as his best season? Was that the year the Sharks went to the final?
Sure. Just statistically, what's his best season? Like, I'd be curious to know.
Statistically, his best season was...
Well, I mean, I'm best full season.
Full season. Don't give me none of this Los Angeles Kings nonsense.
He had a 934 in 19...
Yeah, no, that is the epitome of small sample size. Okay, so 918, that's...
Which, I mean, that's above average.
That's respectable.
It's above average.
Yeah, that's respectable. But I mean, he hasn't been there. Like, we're at a point now where he has to make a save. I understand the defense has been, and I am not letting the defense off the hook here, but you need a save. And he has failed to provide it time and time again. And Dell hasn't, I thought Dell had he had that good game in Montreal. I thought he had a pretty good game. But other than that, pretty unremarkable.
Yeah.
Like,
and then, I was going to say Aaron Dell stunk up the joint in the game that you went to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I like how we're here because we get to talk and, we're honest about the team. One thing that's really driving me crazy, and then we'll get to some other stuff because I feel like I can.
Yeah, I was going to say we're
team so much.
This is so not how I promoted the show to be tonight.
I'm sorry, I can't help it. Like, it's hard because when you look what we watch. I mean, it's hard to find. Like, I am glad that some people can find a silver lining, but I'm sick of it. Like, I am so tired of shucks that we get on the broadcast. And I like the people on the broadcast. I think they're all swell people. But man, I'm sick and tired of this. Shucks, he tried. He almost had it. He'll get him next time. Like, I'm so tired of this. Like, am I wrong?
No, you're 100% right. And it's something that I even noticed going into last season. And I agree with you. I think the personnel are fantastic people. I don't want to say I know them on any kind of personal level, but they've been kind enough to join various podcasts and
right. I mean,
on Twitter, and they're incredibly nice people. But a big reason why I don't watch anything involving the game aside from the game itself is because I can't hang with, well, the Sharks are down 4-0, but let's talk about how, Timo Meier was doing in the front of the net on the power play. And Christine also bringing up Brett Hedican being blunt yesterday.
Yes.
He and Jamie Baker have been my favorite parts of the broadcast the last year and a half.
Because, I was about to say, Brett Hedican doesn't usually pull any punches.
And I understand, and this is the point I want to make, because obviously Remenda told us the broadcast here to pump the tires and build the brand. And I get that, and that's why I'm not saying, Brody Brazil, I hate your guts, you're the worst person ever. I don't hate the messenger, I hate the message. And I wish the team would stop trying to insult our intelligence.
But that's what Hasso wants.
I know, I don't care.
Otherwise, Drew Abenda would still be on the broadcast.
Yeah, and that's the problem, It's like, oh, and now it's time for post game live, and here. Let's spend 45 minutes on the most meaningless goal in the game. Yay, Evander Kane, who has actually been really good, by the way.
Oh, easily the best player on the team.
Remember Evander Kane got suspended at the start of the year, and everyone was saying, "This is it. He's dead in the water. He can't resurrect his career." and now he's the only thing that people are praising. The only player that
How
people
the
are
times
praising.
have changed. I have my issues with Evander Kane, but I will give the devil
so
his
do
due.
I. Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying, like, Evander Kane does some stupid stuff that hurts the team. Especially when they play Vegas. And I won't back down from that. I think he's completely, he does some completely unnecessary things. But, but I mean, he's been the best forward on the team. He is one of the guys in the team where I can say, that guy's earning his money. And I can't say that for very many people right now.
He's making up for not a lot of goals last year in the playoffs.
Yep.
I mean, he's on pace for 50 this year. Now, does he hit that? Probably not. But
Probably not.
Wouldn't that be something?
Give us something. I mean, Rick Nash
talked
scored
about
50 goals on a crappy Columbus team.
I was gonna say, like, Rick Nash has a rocket, so I guess anything. But maybe that's what it is. Joe Pavelski and his 38 goals are out of here. Maybe Kane just puts away 50 and that's it.
Maybe. I mean, give us something nice to talk about. Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, it's just, again, I understand, I understand these people have families to feed. They want to keep their jobs. Again, I'm not so angry at the messenger. I'm angry at the message. And I wish that they would allow them to just call it how it is and stop insulting everyone's intelligence, because look, it's not working. Like, it's not working. People aren't like buying this crap. Obviously, if they're buying this crap, then there'd be a hell of a lot more people in seats in that arena the last weekend.
Yeah, and usually too, like, usually you'll see low attendance on a weekend game if there's something going on in San Jose or the Bay Area, but to my knowledge, nothing major was happening on Friday or Saturday. As far as I'm concerned, it was just status quo.
Right. It sucks. It just sucks. I did go to a Sharks game though.
Yes, you did.
Which was pretty awesome, actually. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm done crapping on the Sharks. I'll talk about the game I went to, and then we can talk about some other things happening in the league, because I feel like we've buried the Sharks good enough this show.
And when Peter DeBoer gets fired on Wednesday, you know where you heard it from.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, I would love if we could bring back the coaches getting fired streak when we fire them on air.
That first season, we were 5 for 5 on firing coaches.
Murdered coaches. And then the next season, we were 0-3. We were 0-3, and like the teams like had massive turnarounds after.
No coaches got fired that season.
That's right. And the coaches we tried to bury had massive turnarounds. So hey, maybe that'll work too. I would also accept that.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, like the season that Winnipeg went to the Western Conference Final, I recall us being like, I don't know how much time Paul Maurice has left.
Right. Yep.
But that's been his whole career.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, no, the game in Ottawa was awesome though. Me and Jen had a fantastic time. We crammed like so much into that day. It was obscenely crazy. I know on my Twitter and my Instagram, there's like, I tried to do like little short videos to just kind of saying what was going on and, what we were up to. Awesome. It was an awesome time. And obviously I can't again thank enough everyone that made that possible. It was cool. I have nothing to compare it to, but like, I think the arena in Canada is really nice. Like, I didn't find it to be like, I know that it's maybe not in a great location, but I thought the arena itself was really nice. Now I don't have anything to compare that to, for like a full size league arena, and we had really good seats. So sight lines weren't exactly an issue for us, but, I thought it was a nice arena. It was funny because like, I think if I was not there, I would not have enjoyed that game as much, like watching at home. but no, I had a blast even though the team was terrible. I think Jen compared it to junior hockey, and I don't think she was wrong. But yeah, no, it was a really good time. And I got to meet a couple players after. I talked to Jamie Baker for a bit, who salt of the earth, good dude. Yeah, it was really cool. Did you
meet up with Jamie Baker before and after the game?
Okay, so before the game, we just kind of said hi. He kind of flipped a puck over to me, before he did his interview. And then after I went down, I talked to him for a bit, and he was really, really cool. Some of the other players came out, but they're they're talking to family and stuff, so you didn't want to really get too in there. But no, I mean, Logan, despite being in a incredibly terrible mood, as well he should have been, was kind enough to stop and say hi quickly, and it was really cool. But you could tell they were in a craptastic mood.
I was wondering how that was going to after the third period. I actually thought the Sharks were okay the first two periods of that game, but that third period was a stinker, and I was like, oh no, if Ian runs it players, I hope he doesn't get the door shut. Get out of here, players only meeting.
No. They were really cool. Like I said, a lot of the guys came out. Mario Ferraro came out. Well, like I said, most of these guys came out, talked to family. They're talking like family members and stuff. So, you want to obviously be respectful of that. What did me and Jamie talk about? Mental health, honestly. We had a good conversation about mental health. I thought that was really good. But so you wanted to be respectful of that. But, Mario Ferraro came out. Barclay Goodrow, came out. I didn't really talk to him. He was talking to his sister again. You want to be respectful of that. I
thought you were going to say he was watching out for, Peter DeBoer's dog, making sure he didn't.
Probably. And yeah, he just Jamie Baker, just great dude. And then Logan, Timo came out, and Vlasic came out. But Vlasic wanted nothing to do with anyone, and that was fine by me.
So my question for you is: when Jamie Baker puck to you during warm-ups or whatever, was he kind of oh, it's a Sharks fan, here you go, or was he oh, you're that guy Ian Reed everybody's talking about? We
exchanged messages on Twitter, and he told me where to go and where to be to get the puck.
Oh, right on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that was really cool. So let's talk about some other things going on in the NHL, quickly here. A problem I wish the Sharks have.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Before you jump on,
sure.
Hats off to your wife, Jen, for putting that together.
Yes.
That's
I have the
awesome.
best wife ever.
Everybody tell Jen that Ian said that.
That's right. She can hear me. So we got to get going here though, because we do have to be. Speaking of being respectful of time, we should probably be respectful of other people's times. As we run this podcast, a million hours like we always do. The Devils have scratched Nikita Gusev for 2 games. I wish we had this problem. We could just scratch our leading scorer. What do you make of? What do you this? This is NHL has to NHL.
Yeah.
This saga, man, it never ends with this guy. I mean, one of the best players overseas, who we waited years and years and years to see, and his draft stock fell because of that. He finally makes it here. Vegas doesn't put him in the lineup. Then Vegas doesn't want to sign into a contract, and then they claim they do, but they still ice the whole thing. and then they trade him to New Jersey, and then now he's scratched. My goodness, where does it end? Does it end with Vadim Shipachev coming back to New Jersey?
I don't know. And that's New Jersey. It's not like New Jersey's doing really well here. New Jersey's 8th in the East, I think, right now.
Yeah, they definitely.
They're in the 8th. No, sorry, they're 8th from the wild card.
Yeah, I was going to say they definitely started out really poorly, but I know they had a pretty good game, even though they lost a pretty good game against the Lightning a few days back.
3-4-3 in their last 10.
Yeah, that's it's not as bad as the old Sharks there, but no, you thought New Jersey would be better, obviously. And I mean, I know we kind of quieted down on this, being that Vegas dealt him to New Jersey, but would it be okay to re-up the Sharks trade for Gusev train? Because I mean, I still think he's a hell of a player.
You need a new coach first, because NHL and Peter DeBoer would
easily
not play this guy.
Yeah, he would score a goal. Yes. What is cap space? I often wonder that myself. But
right.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, I thought, granted he was hurt, but when Brodzinski, he had that really nice assist on the Goodrow goal, and then I saw he wasn't going to play against Vancouver. My first thought is, what the hell? He played a pretty good game.
I think he had 2 shifts after that goal, and then sat on the bench the rest of the game.
Granted, he was hurt, so I guess that kind of makes up for it. But in the moment when I didn't know he was hurt, it's like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. What did you guys make of Roman Jossi's contract?
I really liked it. It's an 8-year deal, which is obviously scary in this modern world. But I think the dollar amount is nice and low for where the salary cap is forecasted to be, and just the type of player Roman Josi is as well. I mean, he's their captain. Like, you have to do everything to keep your captain. And, a lot of it is upfront and signing bonuses. Big surprise at all. But I think it was the right move. I think they had to do everything good to keep this guy in Nashville. And, by all accounts, he wanted to be there. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
I didn't hear about it. What's the contract?
It is 8-year deal with a AAV of 9.059.
Wow. You know what? I'm okay with that, though.
That's
when you relate it to the other player, Carlson, for example, I'll take Josi over Carlson. I mean, and I'll take Josi over Burns, and that's only $1.5 million more than Burns. So yeah.
Well,
I'll take John Carlson over everybody, though.
Sure. Will Nashville fans be complaining about it 6 years from now? Probably. Maybe. Who knows? I mean, that's the problem with a lot of these contracts, right? Is we haven't really hit the cycle where we're getting to the end of these deals yet. And we've seen for some of the deals that, like, obviously under the new salary cap where you couldn't just, bury these contracts under super long-term, million, 4 million, million to bring these things down. It'll be interesting to see how it looks, because I think we've really seen these things backfire is Chicago. Like, I don't think the Seabrook deal definitely doesn't look good, and even the Keith deal at this point is looking a little iffy for the term it was signed for now.
Yeah. But I still, in spite of all those concerns, very justified concerns, I still think it's a deal from Nashville's perspective. I think it's a deal you have to do. You had to,
absolutely, and it's going to be interesting because Hillboy bringing up, Peter Angelo's coming up, and that's going to be, for me, that's going to be absolutely fascinating where that number lands.
I'll tell you this. That number is not going to be given to him by St. Louis. I'll tell you that.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he's going to get paid, you're right.
Well, they signed Justin Falk to a 7-year extension, played 0 games for them. So, it just doesn't seem to me like there's a way they make that work out unless, Jay Bouwmeester doesn't come back and they trade away David Perron for the 3rd time and, maybe they make it work.
Good. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out because the number and if it is in St. Louis, because I don't know what St. Louis looks like without Peter Angelo. I'd be scared.
At least they got Justin Falk, I guess, if you want a silver lining.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I am all about the silver linings at this point in the podcast. Now that we're done talking Sharks, give me all the silver linings you want. Brian Boyle gets another kick at the can with the Panthers. It's interesting. There's a couple of guys that are still not retired / not playing that kind of fascinate me that haven't found a job yet. Again, I guess Brian Boyle's another NHL got NHL.
Yeah, I mean he had a good start with Florida, and he's kind of quieted down a little bit. But I think he. I mean, a lot of their bottom six forwards weren't really, I guess, super exciting if you're a fan. Not that they have a lot of fans, but if you're a fan, and yeah, like Ao saying, he's reliable, he's cheap, and I think he got a goal in each of his first 2 games, so immediate impact.
Yeah, I mean, and look at, I mean, you kind of expect that, a guy gets. We saw this with Marleau. I mean, a guy who's come in and he comes in, he's excited to be back in the lineup. He got a contract. He's just happy to be there. And there's definitely, we saw a bump from that where it's kind of quickly tapered off. So I'm kind of curious to see, where Brian Boyle goes from here, because I think that, once that excitement passes, then it's back to the grind, right?
Mm-hmm. And it makes you wonder too, like, is there a home on an NHL team for somebody like Thomas Vanek or Jason Pominville? I'm
surprised Pominville, like Thomas Vanek, I kind of get, because I think his stock is probably couldn't get any lower at this point. But Pominville's a guy that I'm surprised didn't stick somewhere. I'm surprised Buffalo didn't re-sign him, to be totally honest. Yeah. This is a good question that you put in here, Jerky. What non-playoff team from last year that's good so far has you the most interested? Between the Sabres, Panthers, Oilers, and Canucks. I mean, I've always been a little bit of a Panthers just because I really like Jonathan Huberdeau. But for me, it's got to be the Canucks. I mean, top to bottom, that team is just like so much better. I mean, their top guys are playing as their top guys. They're getting, huge contribution from somebody that they wagered a lot on in JT Miller, who I'm obviously a really big fan of. And I think even though that Tyler Myers contract is a little bit of a disaster, or at least it will be in a few years, I think he's provided an immediate impact. Obviously, Quinn Hughes is a stud, but whether it's Markstrom or Demko in the net, they're getting good goaltending, and I feel like that team is just very consistently good from top to bottom. And I feel like the Canucks are kind of easy to dump on just because of how mediocre they've been the last 6 or 7 years. But if you were to ask me if I was surprised that they rolled the Sharks, I would honestly say not really. Yeah, fair enough. Kevin?
Yeah, for me it is the Canucks. And actually, I recall a show we did last year, because the Canucks got off to a really good start last year too, and we kept saying this is not sustainable.
Right.
And I remember saying at that time, I am going to toot my own horn on this. I remember saying this year the wheels will fall off, and they did. But give them, I feel like I said 2 years though, so I can't give myself full credit, but I said, give them a year or 2, which I think I was more like 2, and you'll see what they're doing right now, I think could be sustainable, because now their youngsters are starting, they've had some time to develop, and now it's their time to take that next step, and they can all do it together, which again goes back to why I feel like the Barracuda just need to stay as a collective winning group. Because Pettersson and Besser and Quinn Hughes and Gaudette, and I mean, they've got a lot of nice young pieces. They've got Thatcher Demko, who is now getting, he's not a number 1, but he's getting quality time to be in net for them. And Markstrom, as AO said, Markstrom's shaky, and yeah, I feel like Markstrom's got that Martin Jones kind of thing where it's like, he's good, but there's always that thing in the back of your mind, like maybe it might fall off eventually. But last couple of years though, Markstrom's been actually really good for them. Yeah. And yeah, I would say the Canucks, like, overall, because I feel like the Sabres are a little bit better than where I was with the Canucks last year. I feel like the Sabres can compete, but I do think that it's going to come down. They're going to take a step down here. I don't know if they're going to just fall off, but the Canucks, I could see this thing going. And then also the Oilers, we talked about it the last time I was on, which was a few episodes ago. We said, we don't know what the Oilers are. They're either one of the worst teams in the league or one of the best. And so far they've been one of the best. So, yeah.
See, and I'm just bitter because the Sharks are in the basement of the Western Conference right now. So I'm gonna go with the Sabres, and the Sabres have cooled a little bit of late. Like I think the Sabres are, I think they're 5-4-1 in their last 10. But the reason that I like what the Sabres are doing, and I hope that they can get kind of back on more of the winning ways we saw at the start of the season, is because it just reaffirms that you can do something different. Like you could argue that, you know, Ralph Kruger's not really like your stereotypical go through the Rolodex and pull him out. He had that short stint in Edmonton. You know, he's not the Dan Bilesmas, the Ken Hitchcocks, the guys that have just been around and around and around and around. It's a really out of the box hire, and I want
he
so
left
badly.
The sport of hockey. He left
Right.
the
I was going to
continent.
say.
And he went to Europe for soccer.
Right.
I was going to say, we talked about it a few podcasts ago. I think he spent like the last 5 years coaching soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, and I want so bad for this to work, just for the fact that it just shows that you don't have to do the same old crap over and over and over again. You don't have to hire the same old guys. You know, like I hate this notion of whenever you bring up, and I know I've said this to death, but I'm going to say it again anyway. You know, sometimes, you know, you'll get, someone will come after me because I said, you know, you got to fire Peter DeBoer. Well, who do you hire? Doesn't matter. Like it does matter, but it doesn't have to be the big name, right? Like I'm not saying bring in Roy Sommer. Okay. I'm just saying you can think outside the box. Like I think Sheldon Keefe is one of the hottest.
Still my guy, man.
Yeah, I think he's one of the hottest coaches not coaching in the NHL, but you can go other places to find coaches like that have new ideas. You know, if Dan Bilesma came in and turned the Sharks season around, great. Is that going to sustain itself? His coaching record also would say no. Ken Hitchcock hasn't caught on with his last two teams that he's been on. Like, you can, I hate how it's like, do something different, but don't do something different all at the same time.
Yeah, it's very, very fickle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
so,
and
I don't know.
I know, and I was, you know, when the Sharks fired Todd McClellan and they were obviously going to hire a new coach, I wanted them to hire Dan Bilesma. I mean,
so did I, man.
You know, Mike Babcock obviously interviewed with the Sharks, but I didn't think there was a snowball's chance in hell that he got hired. I was really high on Dan Bilesma just because, you know, he came into Pittsburgh after they fired Michel Therrien and obviously won them a cup. And I thought he did okay in Buffalo, all things considered. But I think about it now, and I know somebody in the chat pointed out that he's going to be the coach in Detroit. I still think Jeff Blashill's got a leash there. And even if Dan Bilesma did become a coach in Detroit or he became available and the Sharks circled around to him again, I don't know that he's the right fit.
Yeah, I mean, the guy I really wanted when Todd McClellan was fired, I don't remember if he was on the market or if he was on his way to being on the market. Like I really wanted Peter Laviolette.
Yeah.
I think Nashville hired him the same time frame that the Sharks hired DeBoer. So I think you track on that one.
So I mean, like I'm not completely, you know, innocent of the bringing back the retread type deal, but I don't think you always have to go that road. And I don't think that it has to be this guy who's been on the carousel forever, because coaches get fired for a reason, and eventually, you know, like a Ken Hitchcock, it just stops working.
So my question for you is, who does Alain Vigneault?
What was that you cut out?
I was going to say, who does Alain Vigneault coach next?
Oh.
No, geez. Is he already on the hot seat? I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it is Philadelphia.
That's true. Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, my goodness. All right, so I think we've done enough here.
There's a topic I want to ask you guys about.
Go ahead.
Dustin Byfuglien.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Dustin Byfuglien. That's an interesting one.
It's very weird circumstances.
Yeah. So Elliot Friedman, for those of you who are unaware, Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnston both have been tag teaming this story about Dustin Byfuglien and is he retiring? Is he not retiring? And on Sportsnet last night, I think it was, they both said that it seems like Dustin Byfuglien attempted to retire right before training camp, and the Jets basically said, no. What? No. And so my guess is his agent probably got involved and said, hey, what are you doing? Like, just if you're hurt, you can still get paid. So there's this whole thing, but the Jets are basically saying he passed the physical. We didn't know about an injury, and we think that he got hurt in the offseason, and Byfuglien's agency's saying he got hurt last season, pay us now. So, and now I guess Byfuglien says he wants to play hockey again, which further muddies the whole thing. You guys think he comes back to Winnipeg if he comes back at all?
Well, God, the Jets need him. I don't think the Jets can be like, yeah, no, we're not going to. I mean, he's got 1 year left on his deal, I think.
I think it's this year and next year.
Okay. So, I mean, the Jets really can't afford their defense cores. They came into the season expecting Byfuglien to be there. Their defense core is in shambles without him. So I think the Jets, you probably don't like it, and this is probably going to be very acrimonious because obviously they're going to an arbitrator and everything else. But if you're the Jets, can you afford to say no? Can you afford not to swallow your pride and just be like, okay, we love you still?
Yeah. It's a very weird situation. I feel like it's something where they've gone too far, where like one side saying one thing, another side saying another thing, where even if he is healthy enough or, wants to play this season, I don't think it is. I don't think it is going to be in Winnipeg. I wonder if that relationship is damaged. I could see Winnipeg try and make it work, but from Byfuglien's perspective, I could try and see him be like, well, you didn't help me out when I wanted you to help me out. But with all that in mind, like, even if you hurt your ankle, like screwing around in a non-hockey capacity, like, still tell your team that. Like,
yeah,
don't be all coy and be like, well, I don't know if I'm like mentally, ready to play another season. And then all of a sudden, like, literally this news came out of the woodwork. Like, I pull up Twitter and it's like, Dustin Byfuglien had ankle surgery. I'm like, okay, that's nice.
Right.
But when did he hurt his ankle?
Yeah.
Never once when he was talking about not sure he wanted to play, never once did that come up, which makes me think it happened in a non-hockey capacity.
Yeah. And now he's like trying to cash in because obviously he's at, I think the Jets have been very accommodating. I mean, obviously they had to suspend him because he wasn't there and they have to do something with that cap.
Right.
But so I feel like I don't know. I think that relationship is probably damaged, but I still think if you're the Jets, you're not rebuilt. You're the Jets. You're very much a window open now team. I think you have to just grin and bear it, and then come free agency, be what it may. Unless if Byfuglien, unless if Byfuglien decides that he's not coming back, and then obviously you have to act accordingly. But I feel like as long as he's willing to come back, if you're Winnipeg, what else are you going to do at this point?
Pray.
Right. So, yeah, I'm. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on that front. I think if you're Winnipeg, though, you have to. You smile and nod, and you bring him back as long as he'll come back. I don't know.
It's something to keep an eye on, especially because if like I even if like this, I read something that an arbitrator might get involved to figure out what happened.
That's my understanding, is an arbitrator is going to sort it out now.
Right, but even if everything gets settled, and yes, Winnipeg will probably swallow their pride and be like, okay, like you said, Ian, we still love you. Please play, but what if, who knows if, imagine, Bufflin is, just scorned by this thing, and he's like, trade me right now, and Winnipeg is going to be like, we can't,
Yeah. Yeah, it's, poof. I don't want to be, I wouldn't want to be the Jets in this situation, that's for sure, because this is a team that, showed a lot of promise, for a while, and now it's kind of quickly falling off the rails. And that's unfortunate because, this is a team that, like a lot of other teams that are having some problems right now, it's a team that's kicked around the bottom of the barrel. Finally looks like they're on the right track, and then you can't keep Trouba, can't keep, you go into training camp without either Laine or Kyle Connor under contract. I mean, I can't even imagine the frustration. Like, I know I'm frustrated with being a Sharks fan right now. I can't imagine the frustration of being a Jets fan.
Especially, too, because 2 years in a row they gave up their first for a second line center rental. It's like, why not just dip into the UFA market and try and find a center without giving up a first-round pick? Like, as much as I've praised what Kevin Cheveldayoff has done the last few years, that's something that if I was a Jets fan, I'd be really annoyed with. It's like, okay, now 2 years in a row we've given up our first for a guy that we're not even going to try and keep,
Right.
I feel like as successful as the franchise has been the last 2 or 3 years, to your point, Ian, there's definitely a lot of things where if I'm a Jets fan, I'm, not happy.
No, I wouldn't be.
Your highest paid defenseman is Dmitry Kulikov, who, if I'm not mistaken, was waived at one point in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we should probably wrap this up, though, so I'm going to get some final thoughts out here. Kevin, I can start with you.
Okay, well, I got quite a bit here. I'll try and
fire away.
Real quick. Seattle apparently is finally gonna. I thought they were supposed to their team name. Apparently now it's going to be All-Star Weekend when they do it. I'm still expecting it to be the Sockeye, although I caught myself laughing during the show because I pulled up Seattle Sockeye, and apparently there is a men's ultimate frisbee team called the Seattle Sockeye, who on Monday won the U.S. national championships for ultimate frisbee. So that's a thing.
Congratulations to the Seattle Sockeye.
So yeah, congrats to the Seattle Sockeye. I knew I'd get one random thing out there.
If your name is not trademarked, do it now.
Yeah, because I still think that's what the hockey team's going to be called. But...
Oh, man.
Okay, so anyway, for my final thoughts, couple things here. Ian got to go on a little road trip to a hockey game. So did I. I went to Madison Square Garden a month ago for the season opener. And I got to meet Artemi Panarin game. Posted the photo in the Discord chat. We almost became the group of fans that saw Artemi Panarin get run over by a car on opening night. The multi-million-dollar signing nearly got run over. What happened was Henrik Lundqvist drove by in his Aston Martin, and then Tony DeAngelo. You will never hear me say another bad thing about Tony DeAngelo on this podcast because I got to meet him. He was really nice. Elias Anderson was really nice. And then Panarin and his whole entourage come out, and we just started screaming at him, and then he did kind of the hold on guys to his group, and then he walked over and we kind of half seriously said, got to get him now before he becomes a jaded New Yorker and doesn't want to talk to anybody. So he comes over, meets with the group on the opposite side of where I was standing, and I just decided to hold my spot, basically. He got through like half the group. Then he says, okay, I'm going to go over to this other side. Meanwhile, there's a car coming who somehow is not paying attention to security guiding them through the parking lot. And Panarin, who is talking to the fans and not watching where he's walking, steps right in front of this car and literally came within 3-4 inches of getting hit, to which we were screaming. But thankfully, I was not among the group that could be classified as the Panarin killers, the Breadman killers, I guess. And so I was the last person that got to meet him before he decided to leave. So that was really neat.
Awesome.
And then the other final thought that I had, and totally different, I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter, but Jason Foster, who is at NL Wildlife, posted a photo overnight saying that his 11-year-old son, or his son turned 11 years old yesterday, and nobody came out for his son's birthday party. So he asked for some Twitter love, and I've been actually keeping track of this throughout the show. So, but I posted a tweet from the Barracuda game where we all sang happy birthday to Cade. And that's on my Twitter at KevinLacey22. But go check out at NL Wildlife, because since tonight's show started, almost 20,000 more likes have come through. Almost 10,000 more likes have come through. It was at 80-something thousand. It's at 91,100 now. So really happy that the hockey community, Twitter's often a dark, vile place, but I'm really happy that the hockey community is rallying behind this kid, because it's a really cute photo, and he's got this amazing cake of John Tavares, and I can't remember who the other player is on it, but this poor kid deserves some love. So happy birthday, Cade. I wish our podcast had been a little happier for you.
Damn right.
But nevertheless, happy birthday, buddy.
Man, that's sad. All right. Hockey jerk.
Well, unlike my two amigos here, I do not have a fun to tell. Okay. I went to the Golden Knights Montreal Canadiens game a few days ago, and it was very nice to watch the Golden Knights lose in person. I guess that's my story.
The Golden Knights blew it in person.
Yes, they did, and it was fantastic, and I loved every second of it. And it confirmed my wishy-washy idea of getting a Max Domi jersey. So if you enjoyed this show, and if you enjoyed the various GIFs that I sent out in the Discord chat, as random as they were at times, you can follow me on Twitter at hockey_jerk for all of that. Your enjoyment of my content, we'll say. Obviously, it's always nice. It always feels good when someone else thinks what you have to say is funny or smart, and I always get a kick out of like replies and likes and stuff like that. And so, as much as I'm saying follow me for more, I really like just seeing everybody on Twitter and on Discord and everything you guys have to say, because it's cool. Like, we have, like, obviously there's like, Sharks Twitter and hockey Twitter and all that stuff, but I feel like we, those of us on the show and listening right now, we kind of have our own little niche group, or like a quasi family that we can all conversate with, and it's just really awesome that I enjoy. So hockey_jerk on Twitter for me, and then as Kevin said, KevinLacey22 as well, and I guess you can follow Drew Weber if you really want to.
If you really want to.
And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, just in the chat here, I want to just a couple bang out quick. Definitely check out the In the Reef podcast on Teal Town USA. A lot of good Barracuda stuff there, obviously. Also, I don't know if Drew Weber's written anything recently, but you can always go to our website, tealtintedglasses.com. And, Drew has some articles there, as well as you can always find the podcast there, if you're looking for the audio. My final thought is I hope this gets better at some point, because I don't like being a downer. I like to try and be objective, but now I feel like every show I feel like I get a little more melodramatic, and I don't like it. But the team, this is the team's fault. This isn't my fault. It's their fault. I'm sticking to it. You can follow me at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine. I'm trying to hold it together, trying to be a worthwhile follow and not just be the sea of just rage, although that's kind of my shtick, right? But you definitely follow me on Twitter, interact with me on there. I'm always happy to have conversations with pretty much anybody. If you're cool with me, I am cool with you. So, if you're looking for a hockey chat, I'm always up for a hockey chat at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine. I'm pretty good at answering pretty much anything that gets thrown at my Twitter account. And I hope that we, do this again sooner than later. As soon as we nail down a time, I'll let you know, and we will all join here on Ye Olde Discord, and we will have a good time. And that is it for us this week. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for being here.